Hey there, welcome to my complete beginner's guide to Morrowind. I'm going to be going through the entire early game experience and explaining everything along the way, from every aspect of character creation to various mechanics, and your first few quests to help you get started and actually be able to hit things. And even if you're a total newcomer to Morrowind, someone who bounced off it in the past, or an experienced player watching on a second monitor for Morrowind-based background noise, here's hoping you learned something new today. So first thing off the bat, if you want to play Morrowind in current year, the best way to do it is with OpenMW, which is totally free and linked in the description. You do need a valid copy of the game from Steam or GOG for example to use it, but it cleans everything up and performs the miracle of making a Bethesda game stable. It's what I'm going to be playing the game with throughout the entire guide video.
They have taken you from the Imperial City's prison. First by carriage and now by boat. To the east, to Morrowind. Fear not, for I am watchful. You have been chosen.
Wake up. We're here. Why are you shaking? Are you okay? Wake up. Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming. What's your name?
So here we start on the boat coming into Seda Neen. Not a lot we can do here other than follow instructions, so to kill an arbitrary amount of time, hi, my name's Greb and this is the biggest video I've ever edited up to this point. Regardless if you're new to Morrowind or not, I hope you enjoy what I've put together here, so I can validate my efforts by watching a little number slowly go up. So just follow the guard through the whole boat, and we'll get out of here and then we can really get started. If you're quick enough, you can actually get past him and just walk through yourself. A little bit faster, a little bit of speedrun strats there. Anyway, you get up on top of the deck and here's the first big choice, your character's race. In Skyrim, your character race is mostly aesthetic, with maybe a little power or two, but here stats vary wildly. Passive bonuses can save you or get you killed. So I'm going to go over every race before you pick. Hang on, I was going to edit like chapter cards in here to help me keep on pace with the... Firstly, Argonians, one of the two beast races alongside Khajiit. Beast races in Morrowind are very different to Oblivion and Skyrim. In the time between Morrowind and those games, they evolved human legs and feet. So do remember, if you play an Argonian, that means you can't wear any kinds of shoes or boots. It's barefoot all the way, baby. Same for full helmets. You can only wear medium helmets with your funny beast head. Specific racial abilities for Argonians are 75% resistance to catching diseases. That's only for common diseases, not blight diseases. There's an important difference there. Blight diseases can be a fair bit nastier. Total immunity to poison damage, which is one of the 4 major elements of destruction magic, and arguably the worst as it's expensive to cast and lots of things are resistant if not immune to it. Finally, water breathing. You may be familiar with this from other Elder Scrolls games, but here it's a castable power and not a passive ability, so don't forget to cast it if you're going for a dip. Ultimately, Argonians are an okay race. The males start with high speed and agility, whereas the ladies have higher intelligence. Oh, and starting stats do differ between genders across all races except for Wood Elves. But we'll get to them later, because up next are Bretons. The Bretons, who are our first magic-focused race, with a 50% bonus multiplier to how much magicka their intelligence gives them, so at 50 intelligence they'd have 75 magicka, instead of matching it with another 50. Their resist magicka ability allows them to reduce negative effects of non-elemental magic by 50%, so things like damage attribute, absorb health, and so on only hit them half as hard. Their third ability is Dragon Skin, which works as an armor buff for them, giving them 50 more armor for a minute, which is quite a lot in the early game. So Bretons make for great spellcasters who are built with defense in mind. Male Bretons are a little stronger than females in exchange for lower speed. Up next are Dark Elves, also known as the Dunmer. Dark Elves are the native people of Morrowind, but playing one will not stop everyone calling you Outlander, so you better get used to it. As a Dark Elf, you take 75% less fire damage from all sources and get Ancestor Guardian, which gives you an increased dodge chance for a minute. Bear in mind it doesn't work on magic, only physical attacks. And yeah, that's it. You'd think the poster boys of the game would get more than that, but they don't have any major weaknesses either, so they're a good pick for a jack-of-all-trades kind of character. The males here get more endurance, whereas the women have higher personality scores. Important note before we move on, all these bonuses and passives apply to NPCs too, so you should think twice before chucking a fireball at a dark elf. Probably won't do much. Moving on now to the High Elf, also known as the Altma. If Bretons were defensive casters, High Elves are closer to glass cannon casters, taking more damage from every element except for poison, and having non-elemental magical effects hit them 50% harder too. You might be in for a rough time against enemy spellcasters, and if for example you ran into a Flame Atronach as a High Elf, well, I hope you quick-saved recently. On the plus side, they also resist common diseases 75%, same as Argonians, and get a huge 150% bonus to their magicka pool. So with 50 intelligence to start, you'll have a massive 125 magicka to spend on spells. Characters without magicka bonuses will cap out at only 100 magicka when their intelligence is maxed out. So if you're going full magic, not caring about the consequences, this is the one to go for. High Elf women have slightly more speed to start than men, so you might be able to sidestep some magic a bit easier before you get one shot. Next up is your bog standard Imperial Human. Imperials only get 2 major abilities, the first being Star of the West, which steals 200 stamina from your opponent, making them more likely to miss, get hit, or straight up get knocked out with further stamina damage if brought below 0. Voice of the Emperor is a charm spell which can increase how much a person likes you anywhere between 25 and 50 points, with 100 points being the maximum someone can like you. This can help get information from quest targets or get better deals in stores. Both genders start with high personality scores, making them already likeable with other characters. However, the women get more willpower in exchange for less speed. That's about it for Imperials. They're good charmers and quite versatile overall. Next one's for the furries in the crowd. It's time for the Khajiit. Khajiit are the second beast race of Morrowind, so remember that means no boots or full helmets ever. There's no way around it without modding the game. Khajiit get the Eye of Fear and Eye of Night powers. The Fear ability allows them to cause NPC targets to run away from you in fear for 30 seconds. And Eye of Night gives you dark vision. There aren't many areas in the game that are that dark, but it can help when looking for something underwater as it'll make the view clearer. Khajiit start with high agility and make for good fee for assassin type characters, but can fit most any role if built correctly. Gender-wise, the men get more strength and the women get more endurance instead to start. Another human variant next, the Nord. We're getting some interesting abilities again now, and about time. Nords are completely immune to any kind of frost damage thrown at them, and take half shock damage, making them good mage killers. Their power Thunderfist does frost damage. Yes, Thunderfist does frost damage, not shock damage. Not sure if that's an oversight. This is a touch spell, so you gotta get right in your opponent's face for it. Their other ability is a 30-point strength shield effect with Woad. Basically a weaker version of a Breton's dragon skin, but still gives a decent armor bonus. Now Nords are frontline fighters, able to tank a lot of damage from magic users while they get up in their face with a big axe. Good for aggressive players, just make sure you keep an eye on your stamina. The women here exchange a bit of endurance for willpower, but both genders start with very high strength. Next up is the Orcs. Orcs, similar to Nords, are good at beating up mages. They resist 25% of all non-elemental magic damage and effects. And thanks to Berserk, they're also good at beating up everyone else too. When you go Berserk, you get a bonus 20 health, 200 stamina, 100% extra attack accuracy, since Fortify attack is a boost to hit chance and not damage, like some might think coming into this game. Downside to Berserk is you lose 100 agility too, so you're not dodging anything coming your way. All these effects last for a minute total, and when it runs out, if you have less than 200 stamina left, you will fall unconscious until it regenerates as the bonus is removed. Again, like Nords, they're very aggressive frontline fighters with good defensive options. Downside to both Nords and Orcs is they have horrible personality stats, so expect most people to dislike you to begin with. Male and female Orcs are as strong as each other, though the women are smarter than the men in exchange for a small loss of willpower and the lowest base personality in the game at 25 instead of 30. Only a couple left now, and next up is the final human variant, the Redguard. Redguards are another melee combat focused race in Morrowind, featuring a 75% resistance to both poison and common diseases as their passive abilities, and their power is Adrenaline Rush. Similar in fashion to an Orc's Berserk, this is also a 60-second stat buff, but focused on your core stats more, with a bonus of 50 points to agility, strength, speed, and endurance, allowing you to hit harder, more accurately, and physically weave in and out of combat running circles around the enemy. Oh, and 25-point health boost too, for good measure. Being one of the only races in the game with a plus 15 boost to a weapon skill, they're a good choice for a long blade focused build. So with the right choices, they'll start at level 55 with long blades, making your miss chance very low, though I'll explain how all that works later. And now it's time for the final choice among the races, the Wood Elf, also known as the Bosmer. Now there may be some who disagree, but I feel the Wood Elf got pretty shafted in terms of powers here. They share the 75% disease resistance some other races have, but their power of Beast Tongue is next to useless. It's a command creature spell that does last 10 minutes, allowing said creature to follow and fight on your side for that duration, but it only works on up to level 5 creatures, limiting you to small to medium-sized wildlife. While most Daedra come under the designation of creature, even Scamps are level 6, though I guess you could have a pet cliff racer if you wanted. Wood Elves get a big bonus to Marksman, but bows introduce a rather unique problem with Morrowind's hit chance, as not only does your projectile need to physically hit the target in the world, you also roll your hit chance when it does, similar to a weapon swing. Not much else to say about Wood Elves. They're made with being a marksman in mind, and if you build your class for it, you can start with 55 skill, giving you a great hit chance, and they are the only race with no stat differences across gender. Both available flavours of Wood Elf have high agility and speed, but lacking strength and endurance. And that covers all the races. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what you'd like to play as. I've picked Dark Elf, though I'll be using footage from other characters throughout the video. As we progress past this chapter, I'll explain more about skills and the stats themselves as we get to...
Yes, we've been expecting you. You'll have to be recorded before you're officially released. There are a few ways we can do this, and the choice is yours.
As we enter the office, we'll be given a choice whether to answer a little personality quiz to be given a class.
While in town, the baker gives you a sweet roll.
We can also choose our class from a list, or make our own. While the quiz can be fun for new players, we're going to make our own so I can go over each aspect of it. Our first choice is specialisation, with a choice of either combat, magic, or stealth. This gives +5 to all related skills and makes them level a little bit faster. I'll personally be picking stealth to make my main method of combat level faster. All three are valid choices depending on your playstyle. Next is favoured attributes. Your two favoured attributes get +10 points to start, but what do they do? Let's go over them. Strength affects melee weapon damage, and it boosts unarmed damage with an option in Open MW, which I recommend enabling so hand-to-hand becomes more viable in the mid to late game. Each point of strength adds +5 to your max carry weight, and it affects your max fatigue, also known as stamina, and your starting health. High strength also degrades your weapons slightly faster. I guess you just start swinging too hard. If you end up using certain exploits to push your strength to crazy levels, you can break your sword in one swing. Intelligence affects your maximum magicka, which is your spellcasting resource. It boosts success chance and potency for alchemy, and slightly increases success chance of enchanting. Willpower next. It boosts your success chance with spells, as well as resistance to paralysation and silence. It also contributes to maximum fatigue, and if you start with high willpower and pick spell schools as major skills, you'll start with some extra spells, though these can always be purchased later if you don't start with them. Agility adds 1% to hit chance for every 5 points. It also boosts your dodge chance for melee attacks, as well as boosting your abilities with sneak, security, and block. It also boosts your max fatigue and resistance to staggering when struck. If you can't stand missing, this is one to focus on. Speed is literally just how fast you move in general. It affects your jump distance as well as both your running and walking speeds. Each race also has a hidden weight stat that acts as a speed multiplier. As such, male orcs are the fastest, whereas female Bretons, Dark Elves and Wood Elves are joint slowest. There's an option in Open MW to equalise this if you don't like it. Endurance affects your max health and how much health you gain every time you level up, at a rate of 1/10 of your current endurance. It is not rounded up or down, you just can't see a decimal place of health, so 45 endurance will add 4.5 health, you just can't see it. It's not retroactive, so leveling this early can make a fair difference to your max health later in the game. It also affects your max fatigue as well, and how quickly your fatigue regenerates. Personality affects how much people like you at a rate of 2 personality points per 1 point of NPC disposition. It helps success chances with persuasion attempts and helps you haggle better deals with mercantile. Luck has no skills attached to it, so you can only ever increase it by 1 point per character level, and it affects nearly everything you do. If anything has a dice roll involved, and lots of things do in Morrowind, then you can bet luck affects it too. Hit chance, dodge chance, enchanting, alchemy, spellcast chance, and more. With absurdly high luck, you basically become untouchable and can cast anything even if you know nothing about magic. You'll just be too lucky to fail. But you'd need hundreds or thousands of luck for that to be a thing. And that's all the attributes as well as what they do. Next up are the skills. There are 27 skills in Morrowind to level up, so this probably deserves its own chapter. In class creation, you'll choose 5 major skills and 5 minor skills. Both of these get boosts, and leveling them up in-game is how you increase your character level. Every other skill becomes a misc skill and starts lower, but you can still master everything with enough time. There's a lot to be said if you want to min-max your character with your choices here, by picking skills you can avoid leveling until you've got all the stat buffs you want by leveling misc skills first, but since this is a beginner's guide, we're not going to worry too much about that right now. So next, I'll go over each skill and how they level up. I'll go through these in order of appearance, except for when I don't. First is the block skill. Blocking in this game is a dice roll based on your skill level as long as you have a shield equipped. There is no active blocking at all by holding a button, that was introduced in Oblivion. Blocking only works on melee attacks, you can't block arrows or spells with a shield. Successful blocks give XP to level the skill, so the higher this skill is, the faster it levels, as you're much more likely to block. Also, you can equip a shield with a two-handed weapon and benefit from any enchantments and armor bonus it has, but you'll not be able to block with it, so in that case, block will not level up. Next is Armourer. The Armourer skill is how effective you are at repairing your own equipment with Armourer hammers. These hammers have various levels of quality and a limited number of uses each before they themselves break. This skill levels up with every successful repair you make, and you can potentially repair anything that's damaged as long as you have an Armourer's hammer. There's no skill requirement for enchanted items like there is in Oblivion. Now I'll just cover each armor skill here as they don't really differ from each other. You level it up by getting hit when wearing that armor type, and as the skill increases, armor of that weight will protect you better. I'm grouping up weapon skills for the same reason as armor. All weapon skills level by landing hits on enemies. The damage done doesn't factor into XP, the only thing that matters is the hit lands. Hand-to-hand and spears are exclusively two-handed combat styles. Short blades are all one-handed, while everything else has a mix of one-handed and two-handed options. Spears have the longest melee range, and you can prevent some enemies from hitting you if you backpedal while trying to stab them. Marksman obviously allows for much greater range and encompasses all throwing weapons as well as bows and crossbows, and can utilise enchanted ammunition. All marksman projectiles exist in the game world and will be affected by gravity. Hand-to-hand is a special weapon, and I mean that literally. It doesn't count as a normal weapon, and thus can be used to attack undead or other enemies resistant or immune to normal weapons. It also has a unique damage formula. Hand-to-hand attacks will only damage an opponent's fatigue, making them less accurate and agile, but when they hit 0 fatigue, your next strike will bring them into the negatives, knocking them out until they regenerate back to positive numbers. While knocked out, you can loot them, but also your punches will then deal physical damage. Athletics is a skill that's always gaining XP, as you level it by just moving. For this reason, I'd recommend against making it a minor or major skill, as it can make your character level increase too fast. You can level it a little faster by swimming instead of running, and higher athletics makes you run and swim slightly faster. It will not make you walk any faster though, only the speed stat does that. Enchanting is a skill that could use its own guide video all by itself. There's a lot of possibility with this skill, but it's used for making magic items as well as recharging them with soul gems. It's leveled fastest by spending the soul gems successfully, as there is a failure chance involved. It also levels painfully slowly by activating magic items themselves. Leveling this is honestly best done with skill trainers, and powerful enchantments are best acquired by paying an enchanter NPC to do it for you, as big enchantments have a huge failure chance, even at 100 skill, and NPCs never fail. Just be sure to bring enough money, and maybe level mercantile as well. The Destruction School of Magic includes elemental magic, drain spells, damage spells, weakness spells, and disintegration. It levels with successful casts and rewards the same XP regardless of the spell cast. So you can power level this with a custom cheap spell and just casting it over and over. Doesn't even need to hit anything. As you increase the skill, your cast chance increases. This, as well as the power leveling method, applies to every school of magic. Alteration spells are about manipulating the laws of physics and include levitation, jump boosts, water walking and water breathing, opening or creating locks, and more. Again, you can power level this with a cheap 1-second spell you cast on yourself, and leveling it increases successful cast chance. Illusion spells are things like invisibility, which ends when you touch something, chameleon, which is partial invisibility that lets you still touch things, charming people, enraging them, silencing mages, creating light, and paralyzation. Conjuration is the summoning school of magic, letting you summon creatures to aid you in combat or summoning powerful enchanted weapons and armor that boost your stats with the item you summon. So a bound spear will give plus 10 spear, a bound shield will give plus 10 block, and so forth. Mysticism magic is about manipulating spiritual energy, and includes spells to trap souls in soul gems, teleportation, which is handy for any character in Morrowind, telekinesis to interact with objects at long range, including actions such as lockpicking or triggering traps at a safe distance, absorbing or reflecting magic, and sensing objects like creatures or even lost keys. Restoration, our final magic school, is all about healing magic, but also includes recovering from stat loss, curing diseases, as well as fortifying your skills and attributes temporarily. Alchemy is about using tools to create potions. It gains XP with every successful potion made, or at a slower rate by eating raw ingredients. As you increase in level, you're able to determine more of an ingredient's effects, and your potions will become more potent and last longer. Unarmoured is your skill at defense while wearing no armor. Even mastered, it gives but a portion of the armor of someone actually wearing gear, but for beast races your feet will always be unarmoured due to your funny legs. So it can be worth leveling for Argonians and Khajiit, and is why I didn't include it in the armor skills breakdown. Security is your skill at using lockpicks to open locks, probes to disarm traps, and also includes the ability to reseal sealed documents after reading them, though there are only 4 of these in the whole game. Successfully opening locks and disarming traps will level this up, and lock difficulty does not affect XP gain. Sneak is your ability at both sneaking unseen and picking pockets. It allows for critical hits on unaware enemies, though every weapon has the same crit multiplier, so rather than a backstab bonus with a dagger, you're better off with a giant warhammer for a stealth weapon. Unlike Oblivion and Skyrim, where you get XP for moving unseen, here you can get XP for simply being unseen in a situation where you otherwise would be seen. Low-level sneak is near impossible to level, as everyone will always see you, so you're best using a skill trainer if you're starting very low. Acrobatics is your ability to jump and reduce fall damage. It gains XP every time you jump, and gets a lot of XP if you survive any amount of fall damage. Making the fastest way to level this outside a skill trainer is to find a ledge you can jump off repeatedly for a minimal amount of fall damage. The more you break your legs, the stronger they'll grow back. Low acrobatics has a rather pitiful jump, but once you start getting past 50, it becomes more noticeable. If you can manage to fortify it to level 125 or higher, you'll no longer take fall damage from any height. Mercantile is your ability to make deals. It affects prices for any transaction in the game involving money, so as well as regular shops, it'll also affect spell prices, enchanting prices, and fast travel prices. This skill levels faster the better deals you're able to make, so at low levels it's much harder to increase without paying a skill trainer to help get you started. Speechcraft, the final skill on the list, is the art of persuasion to make people like you, or alternatively taunt them into attacking you so you can kill them without getting in trouble. You get 4 methods of persuasion to affect what an NPC thinks of you. Firstly, you can admire them, a good way to raise disposition with enough skill, but on a failure it'll have the opposite effect. Second is intimidate, which can make NPCs run from you in fear, but will lower their disposition after you leave the conversation. Third is taunt. The best way to get someone to hate you is to taunt them. A few successful taunts in a row will force you out of the conversation, as they will then attempt to kill you. Fighting back in this case counts as self-defense and will never get you a bounty. Finally is bribe. The more you offer, the higher chance of success, and is the quick method for those not so skilled in speechcraft. Every successful persuasion attempt, regardless of the method you pick, will award XP in this skill, making it another one that's easier to level the higher it already is. That's now all the skills covered. Here's what I'm going with for my own character, but feel free to experiment. To briefly touch on how leveling works, once you've increased any combination of major and minor skills 10 times and then rest, you'll get to allocate free attribute increases based on the skills you increase during that level. Pay attention to each skill's governing stat, as increasing those skills are what determines the bonus for that stat when you level up. The amount needed to do so is on screen. There's really no need to min-max in this game and aim for +5s every time, as level scaling only happens in a couple of encounters, so you can get by on 2s and 3s no problem.
Very good. The letter that preceded you mentioned you were born under a certain sign. And what would that be?
Birthsigns are extra abilities you can take as we wrap up our class. Some give passive abilities, some give extra powers, and some do both. First up is the Apprentice class. The Apprentice will give you 1.5 times your intelligence in extra magicka points on top of your base points, while making you 50% weaker to magicka. So if you're a high elf with the Apprentice sign, this will stack with your racial magic bar multiplier, with the downside that it also stacks with your racial magic weakness. So if you're in the vicinity of anyone casting Absorb Health, such as a vampire, you'll immediately explode. The Atronach gives you a 50% passive chance to absorb any spell that hits you, adding its cast cost to your own magicka. It also adds 2.0 to your magicka bar multiplier, so high elves born under the Atronach would have a total multiplier of 4.5 with this, allowing them to start with over 200 magicka. The downside to Atronach is stunted magicka, meaning you cannot regenerate your magicka when you rest, meaning you have to absorb spells or chug potions to get it back. Restore magicka potions are pretty easy to come by though, so this is still a very powerful sign if used right. The sign of the Lady is a simple one. It just boosts your personality and endurance by 25 points each, making people like you more and getting you more health, fatigue and fatigue regen. 50 points worth of stats is a big boost for a starting character, so this can help a fair bit without complicating things with extra abilities. The Sign of the Lord gives you a fairly decent healing spell in exchange for making you take double fire damage. My opinion, never pick this. This is easily the worst sign. You can learn spells that do this and more fairly early on with Restoration, so it's not worth burning to death over at all. The Sign of the Lover gives you a 25 agility bonus passive that'll boost your hit chance about 5%, alongside the other benefits of higher agility, and a power called Lover's Kiss. Powers are special spells, and we've seen some already with some of the races, like the Orcs Berserk. They can never fail casting, cost no magicka, but can only be used once a day. Lover's Kiss will paralyze your target for a whole minute in exchange for 200 of your own fatigue. Great when it works, not so much when the target is resistant or immune to paralyze. You can fairly easily get paralyzed on enchantments and spells too, so I'd call this sign mid at best. The Mage will give you an additional 0.5 multiplier to your magicka points with no downsides. It's an okay pick, I wouldn't say it's bad, but if you do take it, I'm liable to tell you to live a little. The Ritual sign gives you 2 spells to turn undead at max power for 30 seconds at range or in melee, and the power to once a day restore 100 health to yourself. Ultimately kinda situational, and these are all abilities you can acquire yourself down the road if you really need to turn undead. It's a low tier sign for sure. The Serpent is another weird one I'd recommend against picking. It gives you the Star Curse spell that deals 3 poison damage to an enemy every second for 30 seconds. So 90 poison damage, which sounds like a lot, and it is in the early game, but it also hurts you for 30 health worth of damage too. Coupled with the fact that many enemies in Morrowind are resistant or straight up immune to poison in the case of the undead, this ultimately is fairly useless. With the Shadow, you can turn invisible once a day for a minute. Bearing in mind, this is invisibility and not chameleon, so it'll end early if you interact with anything. Invisibility is a spell you can pick up from people selling illusion spells, then you can make your own at a spellmaker. Sure, this version has no magicka cost or fail chance, but with this power it's all you can do, and sadly it's another sign I'd be quick to ignore. The Steed is the speedrunner's choice, or if you're on the impatient side and feel Morrowind is too slow, this can help alleviate it. It's an okay sign, but you can get speed from leveling anyway, so again it's kinda mid at any point past the early game, or unless you're a speedrunner looking to beat the game in less than 3 minutes. And yes, the speedrun time for Morrowind, as of this guide, is 2 minutes and 50 seconds. The Thief gives a passive 10-point strong Sanctuary effect with Akaviri Danger Sense. This is basically a 10% dodge chance for melee attacks. It's pretty helpful as far as passives go and will help at any point of the game. This is a good birth sign. The Tower is another meh sign, giving spells you can learn in the game pretty much at any point, and any alteration user worth a damn can open level 50 locks in their sleep, so being limited to doing it once a day? Pass on this. And finally the Warrior, finishing with a good one here. Fortify attack means accuracy in Morrowind, so this ability gives you a permanent plus 10% to hit with anything you swing. I'd highly recommend this sign for beginners. My conclusion is the best signs are Atranek, Thief, Warrior, Lady and Apprentice, and you should never pick Lord, Ritual, Serpent, Tower or Shadow. But hey, if you're a Morrowind vet who disagrees, feel free to explain why in a comment. I'd love to know if I missed something.
Interesting. Now, before I stamp these papers, make sure this information is correct.
Okay, so that's absolutely everything to do with character creation explained, so now here's my section of the video where we deal with the most common complaint I hear about Morrowind and what makes it hard for people to get into, and that's hit chance. Yes, hit chance. If you've heard complaints about Morrowind, chances are this comes up a lot. And with fairly good reason, as without a proper tutorial explaining the ins and outs of this system, you as a new player can end up with a character that has a hit chance in single digits, even against a rat. I'll explain the worst case scenario for you now. So with our example character starting as a Breton, Imperial or Nord, which is already most of the human variants, which are statistically the most popular races in most fantasy RPGs, they'll have 30 agility and 40 luck. And they didn't favour either of those at character creation. They're also attacking with a weapon they have 5 skill in, as it's not something their class has as a major or minor skill. They have also run everywhere, so their fatigue is empty, and putting all that together using the formula on screen, this equates to having a hit chance of 11.25%. A normal rat in Morrowind is level 2, it has 23 hit points, but more importantly, it has 20 agility and 30 luck. With full fatigue, that gives it an evasion score of 8.75, which is taken off of your hit chance. So in a worst case scenario, our poor player here has a hit chance of 2.5% against a rat. And if you didn't know better, like you bought this game in 2002 and this was your first experience, you'd probably bounce off it too. Now conversely, let's discuss the best case scenario, where we go out of our way to maximise our hit chance. This character will be a Redguard of either gender, with spec for combat, favoured attributes of agility and luck, with a major skill in Long Blade, the sign of the warrior, and they are handling their fatigue very well. This gives them all in all a hit chance of 91.25%, minus the rat's evasion, assuming it also has full fatigue, is still 82.5 to hit. And even then, you can still adrenaline rush for a further 10 to hit from the agility boost. So let's see how they do in oh, it's already over. Well, that shows how important your hit stats are, doesn't it? Weapon skill is the biggest contributor to your hit chance, but if you take every opportunity to also boost your agility alongside it, you could be looking at a hit chance over 150% by the mid-game. So hopefully with this guide helping you along, you'll almost never have to worry about hit chance. Except for when this guy comes for you. So we have our character now, and you know how to make hit chance an non-factor in your gameplay. So now it's time to actually get out into the world and find some adventure. More than 30 minutes into the video and we're just getting started, I know, but hey, I'm trying to be thorough here. Now that we're out and about, you should know that Morrowind doesn't signpost quests like a lot of modern RPGs. You'll get no compass quest markers or big glowing exclamation marks over people's heads here, so how do you find quests then? Well, easy, you talk to people. Ask about rumours. Sometimes they'll point you to another person who needs help. You can also ask what's about in town, and you'll often get directions to local guilds you can join too. Then, when you find a quest or get some guild duties, use your journal. It tracks your quests and what topics you've talked to people about, so make sure to ask questions for details and directions about your target, and it'll all get saved to the journal. You'll have to pay attention to your surroundings, as quest directions can often be things like go north to the coast, then east until you see a rock cairn. From there head south to find the cave door set against a small hill by the dead trees. Once you do get to a major town, however, you'll find there are many factions you can join. You get the classic Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Thieves Guild, but you can also join one of the 3 great political houses of the country, join the Temple or the Imperial Legion too. There's no joinable Dark Brotherhood, but what you have instead are the Morag Tong, an ancient secret guild of assassins that is sanctioned by the Morrowind government to perform their executions without hassle from the guards. All these factions also have relationships with each other. For example, the Thieves Guild don't get on with the Fighters Guild, and joining one of the great houses will bar you from entering either of the other two, making this feel like a reactive living world, and not some power fantasy playground where you can become boss of every faction regardless of your skill level. And yes, skill level matters too. To get promoted in the guilds, you need to prove you know what you're doing. Requirements for attributes and skills each faction likes will present themselves as you progress up the ranks. You're not going to become Archmage unless you really know your magic. So go, explore, make your own adventure. There are multiple quests just in the starter village, but once you're ready to get yourself walking or getting the silt Oh, of course, fast travel! Let's talk about that too before we move on. Fast travel in Morrowind is all done in-world. There are no waypoints to click on the map to go instantly to places, so here are your options. First, you have Silt Striders. These are the giant flea-like bugs outside of many major towns and settlements. For a small fee, you can ride it to a neighbouring town, though distant towns across the map might take multiple trips. For example, to get to Ald'ruhn from Seyda-Neen, you need to stop at Balmora first. The mercantile skill and how much the NPC likes you can get you discounts on travel prices, by the way, just something to keep in mind. Secondly, boats. With coastal towns and a lot of the Telvanni Islands to the east of the game world, boats become the primary method of travel. They function identically to Silt Striders, so just chat up the NPC and ride a boat to your destination. Next, Mages Guild Guides. Each Mages Guild has an NPC offering teleportation services to all the other guild buildings, so this gives you access to Balmora, Caldera, Sadrith Mora, Ald'ruhn and Vivec. Fourth is teleportation. Teleportation magic comes under the mysticism school, but if you're not an experienced caster, you can find these effects in scrolls and magic items too. Your options are Divine Intervention. This takes you to the closest Imperial cult shrine. There are 8 of these, located in Bookmoth Fort near Ald'ruhn, Ebonheart by Vivec, Fort Darius by Nissis, Moonmoth next to Balmora, Pelagiad Fort, Wolverine Hall in Sadrith Mora, Mournhold Palace, and Fort Frostmoth on Solstheim Island. And now Almcivi Intervention. This takes you to the closest Tribunal Temple, of which there are 6, in Ald'ruhn, Balmora, Nissis, Molagmar, Mournhold and Vivec. Mark and Recall. This is a pair of spells that work together. Mark sets the destination for Recall, so you can create your own fast travel point. Good for setting at quest targets for your return, or outside a dangerous location if you need to make a hasty retreat. Just remember, you need both spells for this to work. Finally, you have Propylon Indices. This is a more advanced method of fast travel and requires special items called Propylon Indices. There are 10 of them hidden around the world, and they look like little sticks of charcoal. When acquired, you can use them to teleport across the world's 10 Dunmer strongholds, as at the top of each of them is a Propylon teleport chamber that will allow you to use the index to teleport to the appropriate stronghold. So you actually have many options when it comes to travel across Morrowind. Don't let the lack of map-based fast travel deter you, as when you put all these methods together, you're never truly far from a point of travel. With all this knowledge now hopefully firmly lodged in your head, you're pretty much ready to go. In our final chapter, we'll discuss using what you've learned to, bend the rules a little bit. So here we get to the point where we use what we've learned and the tools available to essentially bend the game to our will. Some of these methods are intentional, others definitely less so. There may be minor spoilers in this section, so if you've learned all you feel you need to, then go ahead and leave the video here. For those that are staying though, here's a few little tricks to help you really get ahead. Bear in mind this won't be a totally comprehensive list, so feel free to share your own tricks in the comments. First up, a trick that's commonly used in speedruns of the game to get some starter money. While you're in the class creation room and told to take your papers, you're still considered in the tutorial. So if you steal something, the guard will let you off with a warning, but this can be exploited. If you take the limeware platter worth hundreds of gold in the back of the room, immediately open your menu as you take it and drop it before the guard warns you about stealing, he'll still run to you to tell you not to steal things, but this dialogue would normally remove it from your inventory. But since it's still on the floor, you can pick it up again once he's done his little bit and keep it. Just make sure to return Fargoth's ring for better prices in the store and you'll get much more for selling it. And while on the topic of easy money, there are two special merchants in the game. Creeper, a scamp living in an orcish manor in Caldera, and the Mudcrab merchant who's just chilling on a small island east of Vivec. Creeper has 5,000 gold to trade, while the Mudcrab has 10,000. They mostly buy weapons and armour, but considering they can be among the most expensive items in the game, you can get a little more from them here. Creeper and the Mudcrab will buy items at a 1-to-1 value, without even taking mercantile into effect. As an aside, there's actually a crate upstairs in Gorak Manor where Creeper resides, and inside that crate is a near full suit of orcish armour, and you can just steal it in plain sight. The orcs will yell at you, but you won't get reported for a crime, nor will they try to attack you. So you might as well pinch it and sell it off to Creeper. Alchemy in Morrowind can be used to basically become a god, and all you need is about 500 gold. You can steal a set of Master Alchemy gear from the Caldera Mages Guild in a side room nobody ever goes in. You can then take that to Sadrith Mora's Imperial Shrine, and find a fellow selling ash yams and bloats. These two ingredients combine to make a potion of Fortify Intelligence. And his inventory restocks when you close his shop, so you can buy them in unlimited quantities. The trick here is that alchemy potency and success chance is boosted by intelligence. So making a few potions of intelligence and chugging them while time is paused, then making more, your second set of potions will be stronger, followed by the third set, and the fourth, and so on. This doesn't cap at any point, so with a bit of patience you can end up with potions of Fortify Intelligence worth 10,000 points that last for real-world hours or even days. You can sell back some of the potions to recoup your ingredient costs, and then with your super brain, you can make yourself the strongest potions fit for a beast, let alone a man, without needing to track down a competent potion seller. Given that all dialogue, shops, and menus pause time, you can benefit from many spell effects that only need to last for 1 second. You want better prices at the store or enchanter? Fortify Mercantile for 1 second on shelf for 100 points. Really need this quest target to give you information? Fortify Personality 100 points for 1 second. Gotta fix your armor while deep in a dungeon? Fortify Armorer for 1 second on shelf. You get the idea. With the spells only lasting 1 second, you can make them very strong and still keep them at a relatively low magicka cost. The scaling with Mercantile is a bit busted if you push it well over 100, and with spellmaking you can stack the effect multiple times, becoming so good at trading you could sell a piece of scrap metal for everything in a merchant's inventory, including all of their gold. Felon Marion in Tel Brenora sells some unique spells you can't get anywhere else. But the one we're interested in for this strat is Summon Golden Saint. You can also find this spell on scrolls in the world, but with high enough magicka and conjuration, you can do this as much as you like with the spell itself. You can soul trap creatures you summon, assuming you can kill them before they disappear, and if you have a Grand Soul Gem or a certain Daedric artifact, you will have an infinite supply of Grand Souls, of which you can make the game's most powerful enchantments with, that are constant effect. These enchantments can make you overpowered very easily, with effects like constantly regenerating HP or reflecting magic. The only limit is really the spells you know, so experiment. Outside Caldera to the north is a woman looking for an escort. Completing that quest, or stabbing her in the wilderness, will let you take the Boots of Blinding Speed. These are supposed to be a joke item, blinding you while allowing you to run super fast, but blind is a magicka effect, and magicka effects can be resisted. This is easier if you're playing an Orc or Breton due to their innate resistances, as this effect stacks, but if you can buy the magicka resistance spell from Seydanine or Balmora Mages Guild, you can spellmake a custom resist spell that takes you to 100% for 1 second, cast it, then flick to your menu immediately to equip the boots, and you'll resist the blindness while keeping the speed boost. Using the Golden Saint trick from the last part to add a constant levitate to one of your items will have you floating across the map with ease. Detection in Morrowind is easy to abuse. If there's something you want to steal and someone's guarding it, just break line of sight. Some buildings have pillars or other geometry you can hide behind, and transparent barriers such as cell doors or bookshelves also act as walls. So once you're out of sight, even if you're like 20 feet away, just cast telekinesis and pinch whatever you want. As long as you're out of sight, you won't get in trouble. It's basically a victimless crime at that point, like punching someone in the dark. Outside Seyda on the road to Balmora, you can find a mage fall out of the sky with scrolls of Icarian flight on him, and his book explaining how he's going to revolutionise travel. Now, his method was a bit flawed, but I think he was onto something, so let's try and make this work ourselves. His scroll is simply 1000 acrobatics for 8 seconds, letting you leap across the map, but then promptly die on impact unless you use a second scroll before you land. There are multiple ways to negate fall damage in Morrowind, one being slow fall and another being having 125 acrobatics or higher when you land. The issue with slow fall is it alters your jump arc unless you cast it right before landing, so you'd want it to be used right before you hit the ground. So here's how we can make this work. Make sure you know the spells for jump, slow fall and maybe fortify skill. You can make a custom spell of each type if you like. I'd suggest jump 100 for 1 second on self, slow fall 1 point for 2 to 3 seconds on self as a separate spell, or fortify acrobatics high enough to get you to 125, but this will all be expensive to cast. Instead, if you progress a couple Balmora Mage Guild quests, Galbadir the Enchanter will come downstairs to allow you to put a fake soul gem in her desk. You can use this opportunity to pinch her most expensive soul gems, and use them with a different enchanter, or you'll get kicked out of the guild, she'll recognise her own stolen stuff, to make enchanted items with the same effects as those spells. Casting from an enchanted item is instant, so it's easy to time with your fall. You can make a ring of jump, a ring of slow fall for your landing, pricey jewellery, clothes, and high-tier heavy shields are able to have stronger enchantments placed on them than other items. So with those two created, you can hotkey them with F1, use your jump spell item to leap into the sky, then swap to your slow fall item to land safely. Enchanted items recharge over time, or by rubbing more filled soul gems on them, and now you're basically your own fast travel service. Side note, lower encumbrance makes you jump better, and the jump spell is a multiplier on your acrobatic skill, so this will have maximum effect at higher levels of acrobatics when you're not carrying too much. And that wraps up the biggest cheese strats I know. There's also the soul trap glitch to give yourself permanent effects, but that was fixed in Open Morrowind, so I didn't cover it. Shame really, would have made for a nice top 10 cheese strats instead of 9. Ah well. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. As I said at the start, this is the biggest video I've ever made, and it was a big effort to edit, so any likes, subs, comments, sharing with your friends or your nan, it all helps. If you prefer live content, you can find me on Twitch usually, playing some RPGs or games I've made mods for. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.